Hi, I'm Jeff from New York. Please like and subscribe.
Episodes 57, The Hotdog Vendor. Jonah's heart fell when she heard what the police captain said. Her whole body trembled a little. Deep down, she knew that Jake was guilty.
$350,000 is a huge sum of money.
She thought.
If I have to pay it back, my life is ruined.
Hearing Jake still loudly protesting his innocence, Jonah, who had recovered a little from the shock, also started shouting at the top of her lungs.
It's not us. You guys are mistaken. It was that loser Jeff Florento who stole the money. Let us go.
The louder she shouted, the more she convinced herself that she was innocent. The police captain shook her head and wondered.
Take them away,
He ordered. The police officers escorted Jonah and Jake away. Jonah was humiliated. She had never been that embarrassed in her life. In the past, she had always known that she was better than Jeff and had enjoyed flaunting that in front of him. She felt sure that leaving Jeff had been the wisest choice, but now Jonah had completely forgotten that he even existed. Jonah and Jake were roughly pushed out of the hall by the police officers. Jeff and Lelaine looked at each other and felt relieved. It had been more than a month since the robbery, and their names had finally been cleared. Towards the end of the banquet, Jeff quietly patted Abraham's shoulder, expressing his gratitude for the meal, for his loyalty, and all his hard work for the family. Abraham was overwhelmed by his words. Before the banquet ended, Jeff dragged Lelaine out of the hotel. They called a taxi and headed back to Peston University. In the car, Jeff called Kenneth Stokes. Now that Lelaine knew his real identity, there was no need for him to keep anything hidden.
Mr. Stokes, thank you so much for your gift.
Jeff said with a smile. He didn't believe that it could be a coincidence that Jake had been arrested on the very day that he and Lelaine had returned to New York.
Jeff, you're too kind,
Kenneth said respectfully. On the day Jeff was sent to Emerald Island, Kenneth had contacted a friend in security, and within days they had found concrete evidence of Jake's guilt. They delayed giving the evidence to the police because he wanted Jeff to witness Jake taken away with his own eyes.
I found out from security that they had already destroyed the Dragon Gang Society. I've also managed to get Miss Lelaine reinstated at the university, so when the two of you return you can both continue your studies.
You've done a wonderful job, Kenneth.
Jeff was very satisfied. Kenneth had been so generous in his actions. After getting out of the car at the south gate of the school, Lelaine wanted to go and get some food at the street food market. Neither of them had eaten much at the banquet. The food market was just opposite the south gate, and it didn't take them long to get there. Indian and Thai food, Chinese pancakes, Mexican enchiladas, burgers, hot dogs. Every imaginable type of food was available. This was a great place for the students to get a snack. Most of the vendors were from peasant families and were not well off. Their food stalls didn't earn much, but they were all they had to live on.
Let's go and get a hot dog,
Jeff said as they walked toward a hot dog stall. All the other stalls were crowded with customers except this one.
The food at this one probably wasn't great.
But Jeff and Lelaine were both kinds. They knew these people had hard lives and they wanted to support them.
Hot dogs for both of you. What toppings would you like? Ketchup, pickles?
The vendor asked as they approached. They were her first customers of the day.
One with ketchup and one with pickles, please.
Jeff said to the vendor while Lelaine took a step back. Suddenly, Lelaine cried out.
It's her.
Her eyes were fearful. She hadn't seen the vendor properly at first. Now that they were closer, she could see that it was Scarlett Anderson. Jeff pulled Lelaine to him and comforted her in a gentle voice. The last time they had met, Scarlett had tried to drown Lelaine in Ramsey Lake. It was not surprising that Lelaine was now afraid of her. Scarlett quickly walked out from behind the trailer and stood in front of Lelaine. She looked at her pleadingly and said,
I'm sorry, Lelaine. I was wrong to treat you so badly. Please forgive me.
The day she had attacked Lelaine, she hadn't regretted it at all. Jeff had threatened to make sure that her family disowned her. But at the time, she had been sure that he didn't have the power to do that. However, since then, her uncle's Dragon Gang Society had been destroyed. Before she could even return home that day, her father had called her to completely sever all relations with her and took away all her money. Scarlett no longer had any financial resources, but she still needed to go to school. How could she live without money? She still dreamed of becoming rich, but now all she could do is borrow money to buy a small trailer and sell hot dogs. She had been running the stall for 20 days, but had hardly sold anything. She ended up eating most of the food she cooked. Just a moment ago, she had been pleased to have two customers. She thought that she could finally earn a few dollars, but she hadn't expected them to be Lelaine and Jeff. Scarlett was now very worried. She knew Jeff had the power to destroy her uncle's business. How could she live with herself if this happened? Jeff hugged Lelaine and whispered into her ear.
You can't get over it, can you? You're still really scared of her. All right, I know what to do.
He took out his cell phone and was about to call Kenneth Stokes. After living on the island for a while, Jeff had gradually regained his confidence and his wealth and had started to act like any other rich student. Scarlett and her family didn't matter to him at all. Scarlett's heart tightened.
Jeff is going to destroy me this time. Even if I beg for forgiveness, Jeff won't let this go.
No,
Lelaine suddenly grabbed Jeff's hand and shook her head.
no, it's over.
When they were on the island, Jeff had told Lelaine that he was going to ruin Scarlett and make her destitute. But now, looking at her kneeling on the ground with her clothes covered in grease and the smell of cooking fat, Lelaine felt that she had been punished enough.
All right.
Jeff agreed and put away his phone.
Thank you. Thank you. You've been so kind. I will think of a way to repay you.
Scarlett was so happy that she was crying as she bowed her head. She was genuinely grateful and had no plans to take revenge on Lelaine and Jeff. She knew that she was beaten. Jeff told Scarlett to stand up quickly so the other people wouldn't see her kneeling. She stood up hastily and made hot dogs for Jeff and Lelaine. She wanted them to have the food for free, but Jeff still paid her $5. Holding the money in her hand, Scarlett watched them leave. She was stunned. Tears flowed from her eyes. How had she been reduced to this? She put the money into her pocket and began tidying up the hot dog stand. As she waited for the next customer, Jeff and Lelaine returned to the school, where they attended a few classes. Afterwards, they bought some groceries and went to Lelaine's villa. They stayed together at the villa, although they slept in separate bedrooms. Meanwhile, Jonah and Jake were leaving the police station. Jake's father had agreed to bail him out, and the school had agreed to the bail terms. As long as Jake could return the money within a year, the school would not hold him accountable.
You little brat! How did we end up with you as a son?
Jake's father kicked his butt, then kicked him onto the ground and slapped him hard on the face.
You think you're so smart. Think of a way to earn that money. This is your problem, and you have to get yourself out of it.
Jake's father drove away after speaking those harsh words to him.
Dad!
Jake covered his cheeks and yelled after his father. All he got in return was a mouthful of pungent exhaust from the car. He was on the verge of breaking down. Jonah was so scared that she started crying. $350,000? How are they ever going to pay it back?
Stop crying.
Jake looked at Jonah in annoyance.
Okay, I've stopped. But it's late already past 10. Shall we find a hotel to stay in?
Jonah said as she wiped her tears. Jake pushed Jonah and shouted.
Jonah, are you stupid? I only have a few dollars right now. And you still want to stay in a hotel? Just get lost.
Jonah had no money herself. She usually spent Jake's money.
I was wrong. All right, let's take a taxi back to school.
Jonah knew that she had to tread carefully with Jake right now.
Take a taxi? Do you know how much it cost? To take a taxi back to school from here, it's over $30. Are you going to pay for it?
Jake stared at Jonah with a mean expression. Jonah's lips trembled as she glared at him. She felt hurt by the way he was speaking to her, and when she looked at him now, he looked ugly to her.
Come on. We'll ride bicycles back to the school.
Jake grabbed Jonah's wrist and yanked her toward the row of rental bikes on the side of the road. Jonah suddenly dropped Jake's hand and ran away from him. She waved to a taxi, jumped in and headed toward the school. Jake was furious. He cursed.
Jonah, you cow.
The next day, Lelaine went to school early in the morning. She had missed a lot of classes this month, so had a lot of work to catch up on. Jeff got out of bed at 8 o'clock a.m. and took a leisurely walk to the school cafeteria. He planned to have breakfast and then go to the dormitory to catch up with Royben and the others. While eating breakfast, Jeff looked at his phone. Jake's photo was displayed on the front page of the school's official website. This story was all about the $350,000 that he had stolen. Jeff smiled as he listened to the other students commenting on the story.
Isn't that Jake?
One of them asked.
That's right. What's that scumbag doing here?
Another responded. Jeff followed their line of sight and saw Jake walking into the cafeteria. He walked toward a table where Jonah was slowly eating a bowl of oatmeal.
Even though Jake now owes this huge sum of money, it seems that Jonah is staying by his side and supporting him. She hasn't abandoned him. She must love Jake, and people should respect her for that.
Jeff thought to himself. But suddenly he heard.
You whore.
Jake walked over to Jonah's table and slammed it with a fist. He pointed at Jonah and said,
Jonah, you bloody cow, how dare you run away from me yesterday? You're unbelievable. I can't believe that you just jumped in a taxi and ran away. Do you know how I got back? I had to ride a bike. My legs are knackered.
Jonah looked at the furious Jake with a small smile. When he finished shouting, she said quietly,
Let's break up.